The universe is vast, and the deep ocean still hides mysteries that no human effort has ever fully explained. No one imagined that 600 meters beneath the waters of Cuba, there could be squared blocks like buildings, straight lines like streets, and even pyramid-shaped formations rising from the seabed. In 2001, the first sonar images revealed this scene, shocking scientists around the world. And the question came at once: if these are man-made, could they be older than ancient Egypt? If not, then what natural force could have shaped such flawless designs? Could the depths of Cuba be hiding a modern Atlantis? Stay with us until the end to uncover this astonishing mystery. In early 2001, Canadian marine engineer Paulina Zalitsky led a mission off Cuba's western coast. Working with her company, Advanced Digital Communications, and the Cuban government, her task was simple: locate Spanish galleons thought to have sunk centuries ago, ships rumored to still hold treasure. The crew expected broken timbers and scattered cannons, but what appeared on their sonar screens went far beyond lost ships. At a depth of more than 600 meters, geometric forms began to take shape. The scans showed sharp angles, straight lines, and massive blocks that did not look like random boulders. Instead of chaos, the images suggested order, with outlines that hinted at deliberate design. The operators stared at rows of rectangles set side by side, like foundations of buildings. Long corridors stretched across the seabed, resembling avenues. Even more astonishing were several pyramid-like shapes with sloping sides, as well as a large open space that looked like a plaza. For the team, the moment was thrilling yet disturbing. They were trained to read shipwrecks, which usually appear as irregular shadows or scattered debris. This, however, looked far too organized. The idea began to form that they might be staring at something far older and stranger than wrecked galleons, a possible city hidden in the deep. When word spread, the media quickly picked up the story. Headlines compared the find to the Yonaguni Monument in Japan, a submerged site with step-like terraces that has long divided opinion between natural formation and ancient construction. Others drew parallels to the Gulf of Cambay in India, where sonar revealed vast ruins that some researchers dated to nearly 9,000 years ago. These comparisons placed Cuba in the same category of global enigmas that blur the line between geology and archaeology. The debates gave the discovery even more weight. Yonaguni had inspired arguments for decades, with geologists pointing to natural forces while others insisted on human craftsmanship. Cambay had sparked similar conflict, as its supposed age would make it older than Mesopotamia. Cuba now seemed to join this list, with sonar images too striking to dismiss, yet impossible to confirm without deeper exploration. For the moment, the site existed only as patterns on sonar. Still, the implications were enormous. If the shapes were natural, they might represent one of the most extraordinary examples of geological symmetry ever recorded. If they were man-made, then history would need to be rewritten, because that would mean organized civilization once flourished in the Caribbean long before written records. Either way, Zalitsky's team had uncovered something that defied easy explanation. At 600 meters below the waves, the formations challenged accepted ideas about both Earth's geology and humanity's past. But the mystery only deepened with another question. If these shapes were real, how large were they? And could they rival the scale of known ancient cities? When the sonar images were studied more closely, what stood out was not only the strange shapes, but also their vast scale and careful arrangement. These were not random rocks scattered across the seabed. The forms stretched for kilometers, giving the impression of an entire complex hidden under the water. Straight alignments appeared like pathways, while large rectangular blocks stood in rows, suggesting the outline of streets and districts. The picture hinted at something greater than a single monument. It resembled the footprint of an organized settlement, perhaps even a city. The symmetry of the layout deepened the mystery. Natural landscapes are usually uneven, shaped by currents, erosion, and pressure, yet here the angles looked sharp and deliberate. Some areas revealed perfect corners, while others displayed corridors that seemed like boulevards. One sonar image even suggested an open space surrounded by massive blocks, which some interpreted as a plaza. The overall design gave the impression of planning, more like an ancient urban center than a geological accident. To understand the weight of this find, it helps to compare it with other submerged sites. Off Greece lies Pavlopetra, the oldest confirmed sunken city, only a few meters below the surface, where streets and houses are still visible. In Italy, Baiae, once a Roman resort, now rests beneath shallow water with statues and mosaics preserved. Both cities prove entire settlements can vanish beneath the waves, but they sit at depths where divers can still explore. The Cuban site, by contrast, lies hundreds of meters down, a fact that makes it unreachable without advanced technology. That depth is what makes Cuba extraordinary. Most known sunken cities are found in shallow seas, close to shore. Being more than 600 meters below the surface puts these formations far outside ordinary archaeological reach. If they are truly man-made, then they must have been buried by catastrophic forces, not slow coastal flooding. Only massive tectonic shifts or sudden geological collapse could explain such a drop, suggesting a disaster powerful enough to erase an entire community. Another striking detail was the size of individual blocks. Some measured tens of meters across, far larger than the stones used in known ancient architecture. This raised new questions. Could early builders have moved such colossal pieces, or were the blocks shaped naturally into geometric patterns? Skeptics point to places like the Giant's Causeway in Ireland, where volcanic activity created striking hexagonal columns. Believers counter that the Cuban formations stretch too far and align too neatly to be dismissed as natural coincidence. The possibility of a central square magnified the sense of scale. In ancient cities from Mesopotamia to the Americas, plazas acted as social and religious hubs. Imagining a similar space hidden beneath Cuban waters evokes a powerful image of a lost community that once gathered, traded, and worshipped, now erased from history. Even without proof, the thought fuels the imagination of historians and explorers alike. Yet all of this remains speculation. Sonar can show shapes, but cannot prove what they truly are. No submersible has captured clear footage, and no artifacts have been recovered. Still, the sheer scope of the formations keeps the debate alive. If this is a city, it could be among the largest ever lost to the sea, preserved in a place almost impossible to reach. So the question remains, if the formations are truly this vast, what force could have dragged them so deep into the ocean? The biggest puzzle about the Cuban structures was not just their shape or size, but the impossible depth at which they were found. Geologists explain that for something to sink more than 600 meters beneath the ocean, massive geological forces must have been at work. Normal sea level rise, even at the end of the last ice age, would never be enough to bury an entire landscape so far underwater. This raised questions about whether the seabed itself had shifted dramatically, or if entire sections of land had collapsed into the deep. Marine geologist Manuel Iturralde Vinent, who studied the sonar data, stated that it would take tens of thousands of years for such a transformation to occur. According to his estimates, The last time this region of the seafloor had been above water was between 10,000 and 50,000 years ago. This was the period when vast ice sheets covered much of the Earth and global sea levels were much lower than they are today. If the structures were built during that time, then whoever created them would have lived long before any known civilization, rewriting the accepted timeline of human history. This idea shocked researchers because most historians agree that organized societies with architecture and urban planning only appeared about 6,000 years ago. To suggest that complex construction existed 10,000 or even 20,000 years ago meant that advanced culture had developed and then vanished without leaving a trace on land. The paradox was hard to accept, yet the depth of the Cuban site left few other explanations. Another challenge came from the absence of artifacts. Unlike Pavlopetri in Greece or Baiae in Italy, no pottery shards, bones, or tools had been recovered from the Cuban site. Without physical evidence, many scientists argued that it was irresponsible to call the formations man-made. They compared it to natural wonders like the Giant's Causeway in Ireland or the basalt columns of Iceland, where volcanic activity created formations that looked remarkably artificial. Nature, they reminded the public, can produce shapes that mimic human design, especially under pressure from tectonic forces and erosion. Even so, the depth still bothered experts. Geological processes such as subsidence, earthquakes, and isostatic rebound could explain parts of the mystery, but none seemed strong enough to account for the scale of the drop. It meant that if these blocks were natural, they represented one of the most extraordinary examples of geology in the region. If they were artificial, then humanity had overlooked one of the most important archaeological sites in the world, simply because of how deep it lay beneath the water. For now, the site sits as a paradox. The geology says it is possible but only under extreme conditions, while history says it should be impossible because no civilization is known to have existed so early. The Cuban discovery challenges both fields at once, leaving experts caught between doubt and fascination. So the next question is clear. If the scientific community could not agree, why did the world remain so silent after the discovery? And who decided to turn away from exploring further? When the sonar discovery first reached the public, there was a burst of excitement. News outlets reported on the strange shapes, and scientists from different fields debated what they might be. For a short moment, it seemed certain that expeditions would return to the site and bring back answers. Yet within a year, the energy disappeared. By 2002, a planned international mission was canceled, officially due to a lack of funding. No research vessel went back, no cameras were lowered into the deep, and the mystery froze in place. The silence was strange because other underwater discoveries had quickly attracted attention and study. When Port Royal in Jamaica sank after an earthquake in 1692, archaeologists dived into the ruins as soon as technology allowed. They documented houses, bottles, and even streets still preserved beneath the sand. In contrast, Cuba's site, with its sharp lines and pyramid-like forms, received no follow-up, as if the world had decided to turn its eyes away. Some experts suggested that the lack of action was practical. Exploring at 600 meters requires costly submersibles, and both Cuba and its partners may not have had the resources. Others argued that politics played a role. The early 2000s were a time of strained relations between Cuba and Western nations, and funding a project linked with Havana may not have seemed appealing to outside institutions. Without international support, the burden of research fell only on a small team, and the project quietly faded. Still, many observers were not satisfied with these explanations. They asked why at least one global organization, such as UNESCO or a major university, did not step forward. If there was even a chance that the site represented an unknown civilization, the discovery would be one of the most important in modern history. Some suspected that institutions avoided involvement not because of money, but because of fear. If proven real, the ruins would shake accepted timelines of human development and challenge the authority of established archaeology. This idea of deliberate neglect fueled speculation online. Forums and alternative researchers argued that the discovery had been buried intentionally, the way other controversial finds had been minimized in the past. They pointed to the long history of mysteries like the Bimini Road in the Bahamas or the ruins of Cambay in India, both dismissed by mainstream science despite ongoing debate. The Cuban site, they claimed, was simply another case of knowledge being left in the dark because it did not fit neatly into the textbooks. What makes the silence even more unusual is that technology has advanced dramatically since 2001. Today, deep-sea exploration is more accessible than ever, with private companies, universities, and even philanthropists funding dives around the globe. Yet more than 2 decades later, the Cuban site remains untouched, still seen only through the blurred outlines of sonar. Whether this was due to politics, money, or something more deliberate, the lack of investigation leaves the door wide open for doubt. And so the unanswered question hangs heavy. If science turned away from Cuba, then what explanations are left for the strange shapes beneath the waves, and which theory can best explain them? Once the discovery reached the public, 3 main theories quickly formed. The first theory was that the shapes were natural. Supporters explained that tectonic pressure, volcanic activity, and erosion can sometimes create patterns that look artificial. They pointed to examples like the Giant's Causeway in Ireland or basalt cliffs in Iceland, where geometric blocks were made only by natural forces. According to this view, the Cuban site is another case where the ocean shaped stone into forms that appear designed. The second theory suggested that the formations were the remains of a lost civilization. If humans had built them, it would mean that organized societies existed in the Caribbean tens of thousands of years ago, far earlier than current history allows. Some researchers compared the site to the Gulf of Cambay in India, where underwater structures were dated by some to almost 9,000 years ago. Others mentioned Pavlopetri in Greece, a sunken city with roads and houses preserved beneath shallow water. If Cuba fits into this pattern, then our timeline of human progress may need to be rewritten. The third and most dramatic theory linked Cuba to the legend of Atlantis. For centuries, writers and explorers have searched for the fabled city described by Plato, said to have been swallowed by the sea in a single day and night. To believers, the Cuban site seemed like perfect evidence. The idea of pyramids under the ocean, sitting silent for thousands of years, matched popular images of a forgotten world. While mainstream science rejected this theory, it captured the imagination of the public, especially as the site remained unexplored. To put the mystery in context, researchers often compared Cuba to other underwater enigmas. In Yonaguni, Japan, divers swim among stair-like terraces that some say are temples, while others insist they are only weathered rock. In Baiae, Italy, the ruins of Roman villas still rest below the waves. The Bahamas has its own mystery with the Bimini Road, a stone pathway that resembles an ancient harbor but is usually explained as natural. Each case shows how fragile the line is between geology and archaeology when viewed through the lens of the ocean. The debate over Cuba's formations is not only about what they are, but also about what they represent. If they are natural, they highlight the power of Earth to create illusions. If they are artificial, then they point to a civilization erased from memory. But beyond the debate itself, what makes this discovery so important for history and science today? The Cuban site carries importance even without a final answer about its origin. If the formations turn out to be natural, they still provide scientists with valuable data about how the Earth changes over time. Studying such structures helps geologists track sea level rise since the last ice age, when oceans rose by more than 100 meters and swallowed entire coastlines. By mapping these changes, researchers can better understand how future climate shifts may reshape the lands where millions of people live today. Beyond geology, the site also matters for archaeology and anthropology. If the structures are confirmed as artificial, they could show evidence of human presence in the Caribbean thousands of years earlier than believed. This would change the accepted timeline of migration across the Americas. Some scientists already believe that people traveled by sea along coastal routes as early as 15,000 years ago, and a submerged settlement in Cuba could strengthen that theory. It would mean that ancient communities were not only moving, but also building in ways we never expected. The idea of a hidden city also highlights how much of human history may be locked beneath the ocean. Archaeologists estimate that as much as 20% of early human settlements are now underwater, covered when sea levels rose after the last ice age. Exploring the Cuban formations could therefore provide a rare chance to open a window into that missing record. Even if the site is only geology, the knowledge gained from exploring it would help us see how the ocean has shaped both land and culture. For historians, the discovery challenges the story of civilization itself. If people built on land that is now 600 meters below water, they must have had knowledge, tools, and organization far beyond what textbooks describe. If nature created the shapes, then the site still serves as a reminder of how small human history is when compared to the forces of Earth. In both cases, the mystery demands respect and further study, because either outcome expands our understanding of the past. But while science can measure rocks and history can question timelines, what about the myths and cultural memories that have always surrounded lost cities beneath the sea? Long before sonar scans, the Caribbean was already rich with stories of land swallowed by the sea. Local fishermen in Cuba and nearby islands told legends of sunken villages, describing lights beneath the waves or echoes of bells heard underwater. These tales were often dismissed as folklore, but when the discovery in 2001 made headlines, many locals saw it as confirmation that their ancestors had always known something was hidden offshore. The region's myths also connect with one of the most famous legends in human history, Atlantis. Plato's writings described a powerful city that vanished beneath the ocean in a single night. Over centuries, explorers placed Atlantis in many locations, from the Mediterranean to the Americas. The Cuban site, with its pyramid-like shapes and massive scale, matched the imagery so well that it quickly became part of the Atlantis debate. For believers, it was the missing piece of a story that had haunted humanity for more than 2,000 years. Other cultures add to this picture of collective memory. In Japan, the Yonaguni monument is linked by some to sea dragons, guardians of underwater kingdoms. In Greece, myth spoke of Poseidon, god of the sea, who could raise or destroy cities at will. These parallels show how different societies, separated by oceans, all carried stories of places lost beneath the waves. The Cuban site fits into this pattern, serving not only as a scientific puzzle, but also as a cultural symbol. For many people, the idea of a drowned city resonates on a deeper level. It suggests both human fragility and the possibility of forgotten greatness. If the Cuban formations are natural, the myth still survives, because legends often grow around landscapes that inspire wonder. If they are artificial, then the myths may hold more truth than scholars have been willing to admit. In either case, the cultural power of the site is undeniable. Yet while myths can inspire belief, they cannot provide proof. To move from imagination to evidence, modern technology must take the lead. So the next question is clear. How can today's tools of exploration finally solve what myths and science alone cannot? The mystery of Cuba's underwater formations cannot be solved without technology. Human divers can only reach a fraction of the depth where the site lies, but modern tools now offer possibilities that were unthinkable in 2001. Remotely operated vehicles, known as ROVs, can descend thousands of meters while carrying high-definition cameras and robotic arms. Autonomous underwater vehicles, or AUVs, can map the seabed with 3D sonar, creating images far clearer than the grainy scans from 2 decades ago. Projects like Ocean X and the Nautilus Exploration Program have already used these technologies to reveal new shipwrecks, hydrothermal vents, and entire ecosystems deep below the waves. Private companies and national research institutes in both the United States and China are racing to expand ocean exploration, pushing technology to go deeper and last longer beneath crushing pressure. If even a fraction of these resources were directed toward Cuba, the mystery could finally be tested with real images and physical samples. The question is no longer whether the tools exist, but whether there is enough willpower and funding to send them into action. With more than 80% of the ocean still unexplored, Cuba's formations represent only one of countless secrets waiting to be uncovered. But unlike most, this site carries the weight of rewriting history itself. So as technology advances and attention returns to the deep sea, one challenge remains. Will humanity choose to confront the mystery of Cuba, or will it allow the lost city to stay buried in silence? As we look back at the astonishing discoveries off the coast of Cuba, it becomes clear that the ocean still holds secrets far beyond our imagination. These submerged structures challenge everything we thought we knew about history, human achievement, and the power of nature. They remind us that our understanding of the past is always incomplete, and that the Earth can hide its stories beneath layers of water, sand, and time. Who knows what civilizations, structures, or natural wonders lie waiting, silently, beneath the waves, ready to rewrite history once again? The sea remains a guardian of stories, and our journey into its mysteries has only just begun.